This small group is quite powerful. That's one thing I wanted to say because it's really true that a small group of people can really affect policies like this, especially when they are at a tipping point, which is part of what I want to say. So thank you very much for tuning in and participating. And I know that all of you are doing other work as well. With me, I'm Greg Mello. With me here, Trish is behind me working on that computer. And Bex Hampton is located over there, also working and having lunch. We likely have, well, I'm sure we have experts and relative beginners. But in the present situation that we're in, I would emphasize that we're all kind of beginners. And so I'm going to, that's possibly a apology for not having this, everything nailed down. We'll have about a half an hour of presentation. Please write questions and so forth down, and then we'll have discussion. And perhaps if we don't get through the presentation, then we'll go back to the presentation after about half an hour, and we won't go farther than another half an hour presentation and have another half an hour discussion. But I don't want to have to present for a whole hour altogether. I think that'd be unbalanced. So we'll have more discussion, less presentation. If we're missing some information, Trish will write down what we might need to send to you or to fill in. So
Sure.
We sometimes do this with congressional staff, and sometimes they're very impressed just how quick we can get stuff to them. Maybe we can and maybe we can't. And it will be somewhat informal, and there'll be some holes. So with that, I'm gonna try to share my screen here. And that would be this screen. Share, so I'm gonna lose that's okay. And it should be like that, right? From beginning, like that. Is that the best? It's working.
That's good.
Okay. So there aren't any dumb questions. I forgot to say that. And we're just trying to figure out what's true. And that's hard enough. Yeah. First of all, and this won't be news to many of you, the Sentinel system for a new intercontinental ballistic missile and the related silo upgrades is in serious trouble, and I believe is unlikely to be completed as currently scoped. We'll have, I'm sure, discussion about that. The Los Alamos National Laboratory pit production program is, we believe, unlikely to succeed in any full sense, and is actually only necessary for deploying MIRVs, multiple independent reentry vehicles, new MIRV warheads on Sentinel missiles. So that's the exclusive production goal of Los Alamos National Laboratory pit production, which makes it a kind of subsidiary to the Sentinel program, part of the supply chain. More broadly, NNSA is in trouble with cost, schedule, scope, and production milestones.
Okay.
And what NNSA is doing cannot be quickly expanded. there's concerns right now that neoconservatives, that is, neoconservatives that are more neoconservatives than the ones currently in charge, might cry out for more warheads, to upload the hedge arsenal, the ones that are in reserve, onto missiles, and then want to replace the hedge arsenal right away. And I'm going to try to convince you that this is impossible, so that when there's no higher gear available, and if the signal comes to put the pedal to the metal, it will not respond. The machine will not respond. And I hope it should be obvious, but the national debate doesn't really feature that obviousness, that we can't even really keep up in a nuclear arms race with Russia and China combined. So let's see, this is of course a government slide. There are multiple ways of delivering nuclear warheads to targets, from submarines, from silos in the ground at the moment, from bombers. Not shown are dual capable aircraft, that is fighter bombers. Some of them can deliver nuclear weapons, and implied but not shown, I don't think, nope, are cruise missiles launched from the air, and there are other possibilities under consideration, but shown here is the triad, so-called. So in case you're brand new to this. Okay, sorry for all the words, but this is a story from February of last year, and it was published. I was in a meeting with weapons managers, and someone asked, as we look at the geopolitical context, if the nation has to upload the hedge to accommodate roughly doubling the number of counterforce targets, at least partially rebuild the hedge, and then deploy some hundreds of new theater nuclear weapons all in the next 5 to 10 years, how could the NNSA sites posture themselves for that? Well, everything went silent. The reason it went silent is because they can't. And as the reporter, who was Dan Leone, notes, they just spent the last hour discussing the challenges of coping with the warhead programs they had. The largest workload so far, but nothing like the Cold War. And no one knew what to say. And finally, a relatively young man, head of the Kansas City plant, said, we don't have any requirements to do that, but we stand ready to serve whenever we need to. And they were joking about a national emergency. Well, what I'm saying is that a national emergency won't do it either. This slide, I'm sorry, it's real busy. This could be a big discussion, and it's old. I threw this in at the last minute. This just is indicative of the workload of modernization. And the only thing I want you to get out of the slide, which would have to be heavily modified for today, is that there is a staged sequence of modernization activities in the warhead production complex. So they can't do everything at once. So they do one, then they do another. There's overlap. And and since this slide was made so few years ago, now the sea-launched cruise missile is now a part of the program of record also. And the next Navy warhead has a number. It is officially part of the program now, W-93. And but even beyond those, they have, they foresee things to come. So they feel themselves under a time pressure if they start postponing things. we would say, take the cork out of the bottle, dilate the schedule, and you don't have to hire so many people or do everything so quickly, even if we can't stop things altogether. Now, this is kind of the bottom line of the whole thing here, which is this sucker is going down. I don't think that the US is going to be able to keep up with what it has set out to do. The Sentinel, as of Monday, July 8th, the Sentinel is going to be delayed several years, according to William LaPlante. And I also believe that the situation on the ground, literally the ground, the civil works part of the Sentinel is very likely worse than is currently accepted or revealed. We know that LANL can't make enough pits to outfit the Sentinel, which is LANL's only pit mission, even if it's successful. LANL's already failed at this mission 4 times. And I would like our self-selected committee here to look at the past successes that we had in stopping the Special Nuclear Materials Laboratory at LANL in 1990, the Modern Pit Facility at Savannah River in 2008, and the CMRR nuclear facility in 2012 were highly consequential. The United States does not have a factory to make atomic bombs at this time, new ones, let alone thermonuclear weapons. These links in the next bullet refer to GAO reviews. Some of that we'll see, but it's very detailed, so some we won't see. NNSA does not have a modern production infrastructure for the present program, the statutory program that they are supposed to be executing, let alone for more. Many of the current facilities they are using are old and ailing. Ailing means they are inefficient, and it means they are unsafe, and it means they are heading toward disaster. Program disaster, or if you like, worker safety disaster. NNSA does not now have and is not retaining the trained, skilled, and motivated workforce that it needs. So it's struggling there. Yes, they're hiring. Yes, some people are also leaving. Many of the people that are being hired are not actually qualified. And as a result, there are more rules that need to be applied to the production process. The average tenure of workers in our society at a workplace is less. So you don't have the lifetime careers as often as you used to have. Rocky Flats, for example, Rocky Flats safety technicians were trained for 3 years before they had independent responsibility. At Los Alamos, it's 3 months. What anthropologist calls the heroic mode of production is very unlikely to be recreated. What was in the Cold War will not happen again. Oops, wait a minute. Back, hold on. It's not so easy to run one of these plants around the clock. Someone said to us the other day that graveyard shifts are very common in some lines of work, mining and all that. It doesn't work when you got your hands on nuclear weapons. It doesn't work when you have your hands on plutonium pits in quite the same way. I would like for the community as a whole to look at the delays and cost increases that we are seeing as providing some important information, a signal. It's a data signal. NNSA management is downplaying this, and because they have statutory responsibilities. Once Congress makes a law, and Congress is not providing good oversight, very little oversight, some would say, but it's also what they're doing is more of a whip. You must produce pits by 2030, even though they know it's impossible. You must look at this, you must look at that. Even though they're bad ideas, they they are pushing NNSA and DoD farther than is actually possible in some cases. You all know the famous saying that amateurs study tactics, professionals study logistics. These problems that they're facing are, by and large, logistical problems. All that is before the big problems of debt with interest payments that have to be made, and the deteriorating environmental conditions at some of the sites. For example, when it rains hard, the bunkers that store nuclear weapons and plutonium at the Pantex plant have water intrusion. Oh, well, they'll figure it out. That's, the attitude. And at Los Alamos Lab, as you'll see in a second, climate change is exacerbating some of the existing environmental problems. There are, I am sure, some undiscovered major environmental issues. I didn't know until recently that the binder used in a lot of nuclear warhead explosives is made with PFAS chemicals. And I don't personally know whether Los Alamos National Laboratory has significant pockets of PFAS contamination. It wouldn't be impossible, it might be likely. They're very hard to clean up. We can expect safety problems, safety accidents, and they will lead to shutdowns, and they will lead to lower morale. Finally, it's, I think, a virtual certainty that we are in, we are in economic decline now. There's no reason to think that the social stability that makes work possible in the weapons complex and elsewhere will obtain in the future. Okay, here's a little matrix of LANLs at Los Alamos, their risks due to climate change. And they have identified 141 different types of assets that are mission critical for them. And what do you know? That, let's see, there are 6 by 5 in this chart. All but 4 of these squares are red. The worst is wildfire, but the others are also there. We are trying to get the rest of this report. It's heavily redacted. We got to redact the weather now. Okay, so I'm not sure if we have time for this. This was from the talk that panel that the Veterans for Peace had, but let's see, I don't really skip that one. I do want to say that, because sometimes we hear people saying, oh, let's just restart arms control, or maybe we can get the nuclear weapon states together and we'll agree to TPNW, the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or some other disarmament treaty. I have to say that from where we sit here, we don't see any possibility of that for many years to come. We are actually at war with Russia. Most of it is proxy, some is economic, some is diplomatic. We're fomenting color revolutions in the immediate across the border from Russia and the Caucasus. And it's not just Putin, it's pretty much all the senior security officials of Russia and the population understands that the United States is not agreement capable structurally. And so the prospects of arms control agreements are very low for now. And as you know, probably in February of 2026, New START will expire. And also, as you may know, Russia has some kind of mutual defense treaty with North Korea. I have not seen a text, but some kind of security treaty. And we are, of course, actually helping carry out attacks on strategic nuclear targets inside Russia. We are hoping to avoid nuclear war at the moment. That's we're really back-footed from the disarmament position we were in 20 years ago. And this, and I think we also need to realize that our government is very different than it was 10, 20, or even 5 years ago. We now have a national security state that in effect is controlling our constitutional institutions. I just want to throw that out there because this is not a matter of simple reform. Now, this is now suddenly I know that this is a very technical little slide, but the gist of it is, and I'm going to skip, and this will be posted so you can come back to it. If Sentinel is to be MIRVed, Los Alamos can't make enough pits for it. And the Sentinel is going to be delayed a long time. That means that the existing silo-based missile over here, the MM3 stands for Minuteman 3, is going to be around for a long time unless the number of missiles is decreased, a very long time. So 2042 at the original advertised pace of replacement, if it's going to be delayed several years. That's a ballpark. The assumption here is that full production under Sentinel begins by 2035. let's see, one Sentinel silo in 2032, then 11 and well, 10 more in 2033, and so on. It's a reasonable assumption, but it's just a scenario. And no matter how you look at these figures and you tweak them this way and that way, you end up short in a major way from the ambitions of neoconservatives. I doubt most members of Congress understand that when all is said and done, they are not going to have enough new pits to make enough W-87-1s to completely outfit the Sentinel until around 2055 at best. That assumes that Los Alamos production can be sustained until 2055, and which is slightly absurd in and of itself. So the delay of the Sentinel means that the Minuteman 3s are going to have to be around for quite a while. And I don't see how that's possible without some kind of missile life extension program, and others on this call may know more. Please do speak up in a while. And the silos. The silos are troubling. And it's not clear to me how I haven't seen a satisfactory explanation of the scope of work of the silos, or the pace, or the risk matrix for them. And obviously, if the Sentinel were populated with existing warheads of the modern kind, the W-87-0, there would be enough warheads for that. But then you wouldn't need LANL production, and you wouldn't be able to increase the number of deployed warheads as so many would like. And if you believe the Congressional Commission on Strategic Posture, then there's not enough warheads to address all those targets in China and Russia combined. We think that the cost of the Sentinel system is being downplayed, even after the recently announced 81% increase. We lack details about this, and some of you may have them. We FOIA'd some, but we're not as knowledgeable as we should be. So we don't know whether the Minuteman III silo maintenance and potential upgrade during this long period of time is in the Sentinel program. Neither do we know what the longevity of the post-Sentinel program silos is going to be. It might not be very long. If a high degree of MRVing is required, LANL production is not going to be able to satisfy that, and that implies retention of the W-78 warhead, which will have to be life extended, and there will need to be a some kind of modification, whether very small or very great, to accommodate that older warhead on the Sentinel missile. If W-87-1 warhead is continued, there will be a lot of other costs. And the cost at LANL through 2039, which I'll show you in detail in a minute, is about 35 billion for pits through 2039. But if you look back at the previous slide, you will see that that doesn't buy you more than 400 to 2039. 264, 264 warheads at 36 per year, which is what NNSA's internal auditing outfit suggested would be the true average of the so-called 30 pit per year goal. So that's not very many warheads. If you add the price of the warheads and the pits for the warheads to the price of the Sentinel system, especially if you kind of break it down to the price per deployed Sentinel missile, well, it adds an enormous amount. If you were to MIRV a Sentinel with 3 new warheads with LANL pits, it would roughly double the current estimated cost per deployed Sentinel missile. These LANL costs are lowballed, we know that, but they also do include the $8 billion they've already spent trying to get ready for this mission. So to make all of this, to sum up, the Sentinel system is going to cost a lot more than was revealed on July 8th, or revealed and included on July 8th. This is a reference slide pulled from a talk given in South Carolina. And if you go back to that, I think the talk was on April 29th. On our pit page, you can get the whole talk. And this is just kind of in here for reference. And that's the same for this next slide. And that's the same conclusion at the end of this slide. The W-87-1 warheads are vastly more expensive than Congress understands or NNSA is willing to say. About 5 times what NNSA is currently saying they will cost. So what is the options? Well, there's for the world of the hawks, the nuclear hawks, they don't have very many good options. You know, you could cut back the Sentinel program. That will raise the unit cost, of course. You could drop out land-based missiles altogether. That's a great idea. You could stretch the whole thing out, allowing a kind of trough in the number of deployed missiles. That's the nightmare scenario in the minds of Madeline Creedon and others who wrote the Congressional Strategic Posture Report. You can see some of the other options. In addition to the program of record, which is already taxing NNSA to the very limit, if not beyond, Now there is a congressional requirement for a sea-launched cruise missile with a nuclear warhead. And how in the world are they going to fit in the production of that? There's no possibility of making pits for it, so they will have to recycle a pit, but they also don't have any space in the work program for the rest of the warhead. So they have a lot of bad choices. Yeah, they could make a road mobile missile. I mean, once you've got things that are going so incredibly expensive, then you can begin to think of other absurd options, which are also very expensive. They could put a very old pit in the W-87-1. They have some leftover pits from the 60s. And, you know, they would, I don't think they'll do that. I think it's just, these options, I think, make the Air Force and the neoconservatives scream. Now we come to this is a slide that was taken from a GIO report. We didn't get a chance to put the link on it, I'm sorry. It's from July, this month, it's just a few days ago. It's called Actions Needed to Improve Integration of Production Modernization Programs and Projects at NNSA. And decoded, the title means all of your production modernization activities are slow and at the risk of running off the rails. So you can see here the completion dates of these various projects, which are essential to running a nuclear weapons complex at any speed. And they vary in their importance and how much speed we're talking about. But for the moment, you can just absorb there's a lot of dates here in the 2030s. The 2030s are a long way from now when it comes to economic stability, environmental stability, and supply chain stability. That table left out a $6.4 billion project at Kansas City, which I didn't know anything about, but it was just written about a few days ago. So Kansas City is 2.5 million square feet of manufacturing and office space short. And basically they tried to increase the fraction of weapons parts that were produced just in time, and that really failed. And so the brand new facilities they have are way too small. They're leasing facilities around Kansas City now. Well, that's it. That was actually all I wanted to say. In a single phrase, we're winning. And I think we need to psychologically absorb that the situation is not dire for it has very dangerous elements, yes, but if we are firm and recognize how far we've come, the landscape is changing. And it is not easy for them to do their work, just as it is not easy for the rising generation to find a place a secure place in the U.S. economy either. They at NNSA and they at DoD, which we haven't discussed too much, have these same problems, and they have to make 10,000, 100,000 things go just right for them. And if they don't go just right, then things get set back. So that's all. That's a summary of what I wanted to say. John.
Well, thank you, Greg. One of the things you've been saying in this webinar and also elsewhere that I think is really striking and maybe important is that the 87-1 warheads and the plutonium pits for them are not needed except unless the new ICBMs, the Sentinel, have multiple warheads on each missile. So can you say something more about that? And
Sure.
I believe you on the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm interested if you have other sources for this assessment.
Yes. Well, a few more details. There are approximately 530 W-87 zeros available. The pits, while the warheads were made in 1986, 87 timeframe, I have to look it up again. The pits are from that era also. The warheads have insensitive high explosives, so that is often mentioned as a reason to make the W-87-1. The W-87-0 already has that insensitive high explosive. The W-87-0 has already been life extended once, and this year or next year, it will be outfitted with a new so-called smart fuse, which will increase its accuracy even further. So and so it's going to have a new fuse. That is not a LEP, it's an ALT. And we know that the Sentinel system will be designed to accommodate the W-87-0, according to the GAO. It will be the first warhead to be deployed on the Sentinel system, W-87-0. So if there doesn't seem to be a design problem for any design changes needed at this point for deploying W-87-0. So the pits are relatively fresh, the warhead's modern, the features are adequate, it's very accurate and getting more accurate. The Air Force is already used to it, so, and there's enough of them. Is that, you have it?
Right. And so to repeat this important point, in your view, the W-87-1s are needed only if you're going to put multiple warheads on each new ICBM.
Yes. I guess this gets at a hidden raison d'etre for the W-87. It goes back to the labor force, and as you will be well aware, they would like to have a forcing function that pushes their workforce hiring and retention and enables skill transmission to another generation, and also provides they don't want a gap. So at the moment, after the long range standoff warhead, the W-87-1 is the next one in line. God forbid that they would be able to slow down. And they don't want to slow down. They want to hire more. They want more money being spent at the sites. They, in this case, being really as much Congress as anybody. And the W-87-1 drives the pit production, which I mean, we're faced now with all of these things that should be obvious, but they're behind the veil. We've got one factory for uranium, one for lithium, one, but suddenly we have two for plutonium. Why is that? It's partly because they want to be sure and have one in time for the W-87-1.
Well, let me just, I will stop, but let me just add for anybody who's not up on the sort of the theology of nuclear weapons, that the idea of having single warhead land-based missiles was that it was supposed to be more stable. If you had multiple warhead missiles, that was supposed to be more provocative, more indicative of a possible first strike. So that's why I think this issue about MIRVing the warheads is important. Maybe there's a logic to what I just said, but it also was a point in the gospel of arms control, 2-3 decades ago, that single warhead missiles were better than multiple warhead missiles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess I would add the somewhat jaded view from inside the Obama and Trump White House OMB, that our friend who was there said the entire W-87-1 and pit production program is all an elaborate way to provide Livermore with another warhead design program, thus sustaining Livermore's warhead design teams. So that's...
Now I have more questions, but I think we should see who else wants to speak up.
Well, I'd like to agree with what John just said about MIRVs. And I had a question. This may be self-evident, but assuming that the arms control new start is not renewed, wouldn't it be logical to assume that they're going to upload a lot more of the warheads on the subs and where we go to multiple warheads again, where we've been under New Start, we reduced a lot of the warheads that the Tridents could carry just to be compliant, but wouldn't they upload those again if the arms control goes away?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. And I mean, if they wanted, I should have had that on the slide, that another option, if they want all these warheads, put more on Trident. And they do have them, and they maintain them, and they train with them, and it wouldn't take long to work them in. They would lose the ability to signal resolve by, it would be kind of one and done. And if they were going to stay under the New Start threshold, then but you're under the assumption there is no such treaty, then they wouldn't have that problem.
Well, maybe things will change, but it just we're in a dark period right now, I think, with everything that's going on. So my mind always looks at what the worst case scenario is going to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. So just to add to that, Representative Garamendi, who now is undergoing cancer treatment, dang it, wanted to replace Sentinel with more submarines. That was a proposal, kind of bowing to congressional necessity or something like that. Which, depending on when those were built, that things that are to be built 15 years from now, that kind of, it's different than trying to start up another shipyard, if that would be.
So there's a question from Picus 1.
Oh, there it is.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I was wondering how close, like, how would communities? Because I heard that there was like I know from like previous presentation that there's a community nearby of the plutonium pit. And I wanted to like just ask how close was that again, and what impacts that would have on them.
You mean, I didn't maybe hear everything. Any community or
Yeah.
specific community? Any community.
Yeah, any community that's kind of nearby.
So it's 3,000 feet from the
Yeah.
pit factory to residences in Los Alamos. It's it's a rifle shot, and we tried to see if you could actually see the plutonium facility from the residences. That's hard because of the trees, but yep, it's very close, and the impacts
Wow.
are, I mean, they're not great in the event of no accident, but those people are the maximum exposed individuals in the event of an earthquake and fire. And then there are the other kinds of impacts which occur over the whole region, from traffic accidents to waste shipments to Los Alamos wants to open up another nuclear waste dump on site to support pit production. No one seems to know a thing about this. So there's kind of impacts, great and small, and in different forms. The local governments are all intoxicated with money now.
Well, I see. I would agree on that. I see that so much. Yeah, and it's really an issue. It's so unjust.
Very unjust. The San Ildefonso Pueblo is very close to all these facilities. Their sacred area directly abuts the nuclear waste storage and previous disposal site at LANL. And there is contamination under the ground. Historically, their community pervades what is now Los Alamos Lab, and they have many active religious sites there on the lab, and there are about 2,000 archaeological sites within the lab boundary. So for them, they're in the lab.
Right. And I think one last question would be maybe about maybe this is about a different topic about the tritium venting, but I recently read an article that you guys posted on like Instagram or something. But yeah, that article was like really tough to read. And what are your some like what do you think people should know about that?
I'm not as knowledgeable about that as I should be. I would like, I'm sort of cross with the Environment Department and with the laboratory and NNSA for not communicating better. And I think it's a solvable problem technically, but there's no assurance. That is to say, I think that there are things to be done with the tritium containers that would work, that would satisfy everybody and be safe. But if there are such things, they never seem to be explained adequately, and they never seem to make a commitment to do them. So, without, so I haven't, again, I come back to pleading ignorance. They don't make it easy to find out.
Yeah. Thanks so much for thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Let's see, John, do you have other questions? I bet you do. You gotta unmute. Comments, questions, comments. There it goes. Yeah.
So what was it last fall? The DoD said they were going to go forward with B-61-13 bomb, and I gather they're going to use, but maybe have to modify an existing warhead for that. Then recently, I believe a Heritage affiliated commentator has been saying, maybe an influential person in like a Trump administration has been saying there will need to be testing.
Oh, yeah.
Nuclear explosive testing of the W-93 for submarine launched ballistic missiles being designed at Los Alamos, the B-61-13. So you're getting asked a wide range of things today, but if you have any comments on that, I'd be interested in, do you think there would be any drive to also test the W-87-1?
Mhm. Going back, let's see. Thank you. Those are great questions. Going back to the beginning of the Trump administration in 2017, the PNAC people, the neoconservatives, were pushing all kinds of stuff, and a colleague, or same person in the White House, said, "Our hope lies with sane generals." And I will be able to stop some of these, Greg, but I'm not going to be able to stop all of them. And of interest to you, a student of government, at that time, the lab directors acquired a temporary seat at the cabinet table to discuss whether they themselves should be funded to do these things. And which I was furious about. But anyway, you were fought the good fight in the CTBT days, and you'll recall the person in the Z division at Livermore, what was his name, that we were in correspondence with, talked to. Yeah, he briefed the president, I think. And we were all talking to Hazel O'Leary, and the gist of it was Hans Bethe came to one of our events and spoke about this. Basically, the gist is that the United States has relatively little to learn from testing, even then, and other countries have a lot to learn. So from those who are competitive, have the idea that the US should be a successful nuclear competitor, we don't want to test for that reason. And the other reason, of course, is that if the United States conducts a nuclear test, then it legitimates nuclear testing for the whole world, which is really a bad idea. And those arguments were such no-brainers once they got, fought through, that people said we don't have to test. Now, fast forward, but we get all these machines to play with that would, like NIF, like DART, and now there is a whole, now they basically want to build a DART facility 1,000 feet underground in Nevada, the enhanced capability for subcritical experiments. And with a Scorpius machine, it's like 20 times over the original cost estimate. And they say they need to finish it to certify the W-93.
That is a strong statement.
Yeah, but I have heard Marvin Adams, #2 at NNSA, say, relax, don't worry, we can certify that with or without Scorpius. And we will certify it. And I strongly believe that they have vastly better models, data, and modeling than they did back in when the CTBT was established, and that these Heritage Foundation people are just ignorant. And the labs are playing along with this to some extent because it provides the impetus for funding their toys and for their programs. And the computers for Scorpius, you know, they can, if they just back off from the threat from performance boundaries, like for the W-93, you add another 100 grams of plutonium, whatever, then they become very sure. I mean, these variables are under their control. And really it's and the B6113, gosh, the characteristics of the B61 are known backwards and forwards and inside. Now for how many decades? 6 decades, I don't know, from the 60s, so 4 decades, 5, 6, yeah. And the W-87-1, they have already changed it, taken off some bells and whistles, and they have made it to so the pit is easier to make. And I just don't think that because of the technical, I don't think they need to test technically. I think it would be very difficult to test technically, and it would take years to do it. They get better data from, there's some critical tests and all the other, pyramid of tests that go into that. And the international implications are so dire that only a few wingnuts will actually want to do this. That's question.
Okay, well, thank you, Greg. And since I mentioned the B6113, sorry, this is a bit off topic, but I wonder if you or Stephen or anybody have any idea of what is the rationale for this? Why is this happening? Why a new gravity bomb to be dropped from an aircraft?
I do kind of. It's a high yield gravity bomb. It's a low cost feature. They've got the tail kit. They've made, what is the CEP of the B6112? Is it like 50 meters or 30 meters, something like that? And now if they put a 3 or 400 kiloton physics package in there, then they have a ability to address underground targets, which they now can only address with the B-83, which is a megaton bomb. That's so they want to retire some people want to retire the B-83.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. And where will the modified warhead be developed?
LANL and Sandia. Probably mostly Sandia. It's not a deep modification.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Carol, sorry.
Yeah, hi, Greg. I live here in Fresno, California. I'm about 3 miles from the Air National Guard. And last week I called the public relations officer to inquire about how to submit a public records request, California public records request. And he said, what do you want to know? And I said, well, I would really like to know if you have any nuclear weapons on your jets out there. And he said, no, we don't. And I said, wow, I thought you would lose your job if you told me that I'd have to, go through all the, you can answer my question. So I was wondering if you have any idea, do these, because I here on the coast, you know, they fly up and down the coast and 50 miles out, these fighter
Right.
jets. Right now that we have, what do we have? F-15s, and they want to retire them and replace them with the F-15EX Eagles, which I don't know. Anyway, any
Okay.
thoughts on that?
Yes, they don't have nuclear weapons there at your local base near Fresno. And you would know, well,
Yeah.
we'd know, the world would know if we look closely at the security aspects. But I believe they do have them at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada,
Okay,
which is not too far.
thank you.
So you could get a, overflight, who knows? And you could get flight of from Bangor, Washington, down here to Albuquerque, there could be nuclear weapons in the air somewhere, but they wouldn't be based there. Okay.
I guess
John,
this is Michael. Can I ask a quick question?
of course,
Just in terms of the generals that you mentioned saying, some of them are realists in terms of budget and logistics and so forth. Is that something that's prevalent, or are they a small minority of people who are sort of, waving their hands in the air and looking to get this to happen somehow in a mysterious way that doesn't seem logistically possible based on what you've presented today? Does that make sense, my question?
yes. We were talking about this the other day. Where are these generals? There used to be more of them. As those, who've been around for a while will know, they retired or they died. That dialogue has gone underground to the extent that it's going on. It's gone underground. And that's part of what I meant by saying that things have really changed in the last very few years. So it seems that any frank discussion about nuclear weapon capabilities or what should and shouldn't happen is taking place behind closed doors. And occasionally, they'll say something like, I think Admiral Richard at Stratcom said, all the money in the world is not going to buy back schedule on pit production. Money's not an issue. It's we have the money. But that type of thing is, I personally am thinking that they don't want to talk about the problems openly.
Can I make a comment, Greg?
Yeah.
I had 2 radio interviews on the West Coast that were canceled because YouTube told them anything that was about nuclear war they didn't want aired. And I did record the second interview, and I was saying nuclear conflict, but I got worked up in the middle of the interview and actually said the word nuclear war, and so that was enough to keep the program from being aired. So it's not just in private, it's in public too.
Oh, yes. So in other words, there's some things are just not mentioned in polite society. Some of it is official, some of it is informal. I think that, basically this is the war mentality as far as Congress is concerned. They don't want to, it's a spillover from the Ukraine war. That, which is not going good, not going well. And so we don't want to have bad news now. Because we're at war. Because we're in a,
Michael, again here, just to follow up then. So your belief then is that maybe there are realist generals, but they're talking amongst themselves, as it were, and not making public pronouncements about this So as a result, we have really no idea how they will address the reality that they must know about, the reality you just presented to us. Is that correct?
Yes, and the other thing is that the quality, and this is, I'm the last person to judge this, but I guess I have to, given what we're doing. The quality of candor across the general staff of the US military has declined over the last 20 years. So you may recall that there was a saying that nobody above the rank of colonel speaks the truth anymore. And so that's related to the nature of promotion. And I can't speak to that, but I've heard it too many times. And the other thing that's related to this is that I doubt we will hear or get much evidence of this until there is a budget shortage. And then the knives will come out. That's, I have to sacrifice a submarine for your cost overrun over my dead body, that kind of thing. And then the defense reporters will cover that because that's kind of in their beat. But maybe
so that in a sense is one point of reality that we could address somehow by highlighting the budget aspects of these things and how, and if you have, I don't know these people, but people who know staffers and so forth who are preparing these budgets and thinking about them are going to have to address that. That'll be perhaps the most, the soonest down the road, as it were, that we'll cross.
Yes, there is a point about Sentinel I didn't mention, which is probably really important, which is that apparently and I don't know as much about this as I should, but I believe under Nunn-McCurdy, or the Air Force has to eat this cost overrun within their budget unless Congress passes another law. So it's $44 billion that the Air Force has got to eat. And it doesn't take effect immediately, but they got a few years before it starts to bite. But that's a lot of money. And they have to decide about how many, it's going to be Sentinel silos versus bombers and fighter planes. Bex has it.
Well, yeah, I thought Pecos had a good question about how this is going to affect local communities, but I think it's important to point out that deterrence is a myth and producing nuclear weapons is inherently aggressive. And so it's urgent, not just for people who live near or who are working in this factory, but for everyone in this state, country, and country to oppose the Los Alamos plutonium bomb factory to stop nuclear world war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. That there's they need this, any break in their momentum. For example, with pit production, is a big problem for them. So anything which, if there's a delay or, and pit production, they really, as John said, it's for MIRVing Sentinel, adding additional quantitative, increase in the number of warheads that we have now. And of course, if we really want Russia and China to start popping warheads out, this would be the way to do it. And on a combined basis, they can certainly do it faster than we can. To wrap it up. More, should we wrap up? Further comments? There's John back.
Doesn't seem like a good idea to get in an arms race with China. That's given all else that they're capable of doing. So
I don't know, John, you saw, if you've seen the inside of one of, I guess I've mentioned this a couple times now in conversation. I have to get a hold of this video again of a Chinese electric vehicle factory, highly automated. I don't know what their production rate was, but they were doing a lot of stuff. And either the person writing the article that referenced it or a Chinese diplomat said, you know, if you want us to produce cruise missiles in a factory like this, just, you know, we could do it. Just push.
You have a cartoon or something along those lines?
I wish I did.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, do you have anything documenting that?
I will look for it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I got my assignment for one of
Yeah.
them.
You know, we offshored so much of our industrial base to China. And we get like most of our pharmaceuticals come from there. And I mean, why would you sanction a company that you're country that you're completely dependent upon for your medications and 80% of the stuff that goes into your big box stores? They're going to just go, well, thanks for building all these nice factories here for us. You know, I mean, I just am astounded by the lack of a thinking in Washington of the people that want to pursue these sorts of aggressive policies that are going to, even in Australia, that's China's their largest trading partner. And they went ahead with AUKUS, you know, we need to get the attacks, nuclear subs from the US. I don't understand any of that.
Mhm.
Stephen, can you imagine what the reaction would have been if it had been like a second Trump administration pursued AUKUS, the submarine deal? Yeah.
Mhm.
I wrote an article for well, foundation down there that it's funny because I went there in 2009 and the lady there who was with her father who saw me speak is one of the directors, and she asked me to write an article now. So I felt kind of good about that. But, you know, the numbers are astounding. The amount of money they spend per person in Australia just to fund that program is like, it was something like $15,000 or $18,000 per person. Just anyway, yeah.
Right, yeah. Just so I'm clear, you know, my point was that the Biden administration got a free pass from the media on this submarine that Australia, US, and UK nuclear powered submarine, not nuclear armed, are pursuing
Yeah.
against China.
Uh-huh.
I would like to add something to the comment to Pecos. The nature of the impacts that we see from at Los Alamos in particular, and possibly elsewhere, has evolved a little bit. Some of the same impacts are still there. So, you know, environmental impacts, some of it's still there. But they have done, you know, this is another success story from the activist community. A lot of stuff has been improved. So you kind of look for a real environmental smoking gun. It is hard to find now because of the hard work of a lot of people. And at the same time, let's say in Santa Fe, at one time there was a feeling that nuclear weapons were bad. And now let's say on the city council. And now the city council, they're not quite ready to say that nuclear weapons are good, but they want that economic development and they're hungry for it. And just as in the case of the weapons labs, they have fixed some of their worst environmental problems and they continue to be sophisticated about their co-optation and their ability to distract. and keep people from knowing what's going on. So that's the impacts are, some of the same ones are still there, and then there's other broader impacts. I mean, I guess I heard Tom Mason, the director of LANL, sort of blurt out about traffic fatalities. There's bad traffic impacts. And I think the last site-wide environmental impact statement that they did, they said that pit production would cause 1 extra death every 100,000 years or something like this. And it was so infuriating and stupid. But we have, there's, as Bex has found, there's now a traffic accident every day on one of Los Alamos's main routes. And they're fatalities, serious accidents, and road rage incidents all the time. So, I mean, just in that little, seems trivial, but it isn't really trivial. It's a real serious health issue. And I should mention also that nuclear weapons don't make people feel good. And hi, Susie. There were 6 fentanyl overdoses on one weekend in Los Alamos. And there were something like 12 over the course of the year. It's just a little community. And the community of Los Alamos doesn't even know how many suicides there are. The county council doesn't even know. They know how many unattended deaths there are, but they don't really know how many suicides. And there are some.
Jean Nichols has her hand up.
Hi, Jean.
Hi. I'm sorry, I can't get my video to come on. It's just purple.
No, that's okay.
It's okay.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, I don't think we get to speak at Monday's meeting, so is the strategy just to get the room packed? What's the strategy for Monday? If we can mention that a little bit before you end.
Sure. Yes, you're right. There won't be much time, and they will control that. They may, they might do something like ask people to write questions on a card or something. So the strategy is to have clear statements on signs,
Right.
and to be there in person in large numbers. And the combination of that will, we hope, make an impression on others who are there, and on the news media, and on those who are watching or will watch secondhand in Washington.
Okay, that sounds good. And I'll make some signs, but if you have other ideas of certain, short things that should be on signs, if you can email them to me, I'll whip those out.
Okay, Bex, Trish and I will do some.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a bunch drafted, so.
Yeah, Bex has got it going.
Okay, thanks.
Susie. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jean, I have some ideas for science too. So
I know.
When we talk afterwards, we can go
Yeah.
over that too. And but back to the LANL economic development narrative, it's false. It's, I think we need to emphasize as much as we can that the Los Alamos negatively impacts northern New Mexico and, everything. But here, at the local level, northern New Mexico, all the way to Albuquerque, where they're, trying to steal valuable people who could be doing things that are for the good of the communities and their society and their cultures, and taking them, just a few and not that many, out of the 2 million people in New Mexico, And it's, what is it? How many thousand? 15,000
At LANL,
employees?
almost 18.
18,000. That's still, not that many. How many people live in Santa Fe? And they keep doing this. I don't know what the population is, but I'm sure it's way, way more than 18,000. And so I just think that Taos has 35,000. I think it's important to always call that people on that and, use their stupid the BBER study, which is the last one they did. Because it's complete.
Yeah.
Bull, you know what.
Yeah. Hi, Jackie. Bex, we don't have enough staff here to know everything. And I mean, it's so hard to get information out, but Bex, has been getting some fascinating details. What fraction of the ironworker union in New Mexico work at LANL?
30%.
30% of all iron workers in New Mexico are working at LANL. How many of the union electricians in northern New Mexico work at LANL?
All of them have been recruited.
Everyone.
That,
So,
Okay.
your climate transition, your energy transition, it's out in the wind. It's headed to the pit facility. And that's where that's part of this impact. One missionary electrician that can work with New Mexico villages and micro communities to build local grids and train people could make a gigantic difference. If we had a little bit of government focus and we weren't letting LANL write our whole regional development plan. But that's kind of what's happening.
Greg, this has been highly informative, so thanks for putting this on.
Yes.
I'm going to sign off now.
Okay.
And good to see others, Stephen
Hi,
and
John.
others. All right,
Yes.
bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yes.
So-
Bye, Jody. Looks like people
So
are going.
any last, there's Jody. Hi. Any last minute questions from anybody, or it doesn't have to be last minute? Beckus?
Ficus.
Beckus.
Yeah. Hey, it's Becas. I also go by Dave. And Becas just means freckles in Spanish.
Okay.
But I was wondering, I just wanted to ask that, what'd you say an advanced, a society that is considered to be advanced, or evolving, wouldn't you say that's making a change toward sustainable energy and also free public transportation and all those things, and even stopping war, creating more war, not creating peace?
I didn't hear the question part of it. I heard somebody. Did you get that, Bex? No.
I guess
Say
my
it.
question is
Okay.
what do you think makes an advanced society?
Is the what?
What are the values?
Oh, the
What
best.
are the values of an advanced society? Yeah.
Yes, those values of community resilience and mutual respect for each other and the environment. Those, this, but the laboratory does not valorize any of that.
Not mutual assured destruction?
Yeah. Yeah, that's their deal, mutually assured destruction. And that's not really it's not really inspiring or helpful for the communities. That famous
It's super hard to clean up too.
super hard to clean up, super hard.
Yes, it is.
Especially if nobody's left.
Nobody's left to clean it up.
that one a lawyer at the beginning of the Manhattan, well, at the end of the Manhattan Project, he said that it was its own separate sovereignty with its own airplanes, its own fleet, its own security forces. It was a sovereignty that could bring to an end all others. So, hi, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie.
You know, what I don't understand is it seems like the whole idea of mutual assured destruction has gone out the window, at least in the Western capitals. There doesn't seem to be any fear of mutual assured destruction, which was sort of the guiding principle in the Cold War. At least it seemed that way to me. Maybe I was naive, but you know, just continually pushing for war with Russia, even in a place like Lithuania or Estonia, where they've got a few million people, they want to defeat Russia. That just seems suicidal to me, and I don't understand that at all.
Mm-hmm. So could you expand that just a little bit? What Steve is saying, that there are now people who believe in limited nuclear war, and in this country.
Well, I would say that in that sense, that's true in the sense that they think they can make Russia back down. But I also think that goes to the point of believing that they can essentially win a nuclear war. It might go all the way back to Lieber and Press asserting that the U.S. had nuclear primacy. I mean, that was a neocon kind of theme. And I think when you have agencies that are feeding more or less bad intelligence to the political elite, and they get these agencies set up over decades to only hire people that say what they want to hear, which is why they, I guess, think that they're still winning the war in Ukraine and that Ukraine can win, and that somehow we can have a war with Russia that we can go on for years. They're going to get the females drafted, and they want to rebuild the whole military and industrial kind of complex in Europe, and Germany's just gone along with the idea that the U.S. is going to put, they call them long-range weapons, but it's basically the intermediate-range nuclear weapons that were removed under the INF Treaty that are now going to be reinstated there, make Germany ground zero. But those weapons will be able to hit Moscow in 5 to 10 minutes and other parts of, you know, Russia. So I see that as an incredibly dangerous development. And of course, it's not even talked about in the press, you know, but at least very little. So that shows me that there's no fear of mutual assured destruction anymore.
And you know, the one thing I look at is they're talking about Ukraine, and what they're not talking about is that they've killed a whole generation of men.
Right.
And they've
falsified the data
the
on that.
land. And so anybody who is okay with that doesn't even have the sense, to me, to think about mutually assured destruction.
Right.
And why we're at this state, I don't know. But the state of politics right now is really horrendous to me.
Oh, it is. Well, there's always sort of an absence of morality in politics, but we're at the point where it's more like a criminal cabal, it seems like, running things. And the debates that showed that Biden is really non-compos mentis. I mean, he is consistently, every time he gives a talk now, he gets the name of a leader mixed up, whether it's Zelensky and Putin, or his vice president with Trump, or he said the last one he gave was from the Oval Office. He was saying, we want to settle things in the ballot box, and he kept saying the battle box, but that wasn't repeated in the news. But so who's in charge? Who's making the decisions? You know, it's not Biden, I don't think.
Pecos, you have more.
Oh.
Because your microphone, speak real clearly so we can help us.
Okay. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Better.
Okay. I just wanted to add a little bit about, like, earlier this year, when we were there was a city council meeting and also an air quality control board meeting in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the same time. And the city council meeting was about banning the air board, or like kind of abolishing it. So while they were voting on that, we were in a regulation, we were at the regulation hearing, and in the regulation hearing to regulate Albuquerque's air quality or like industries that are polluting, like they brought out the nuclear card, or like kind of used that as a way to kind of get out, like I want to use a good word, like meddle their way out of it, I guess, like squiggle their, not squiggle, squirm their way out of being able to be like enforce these types of regulations that would be beneficial for its community members. And that also brings us to the contradiction of like they claim national defense and all that stuff while not I guess it's like they only choose to defend specific type of people. I don't know, they're not protecting their own citizens, they're actively harming them with all of this pollution, all of these environmental injustices, and it keeps happening. And yeah, and like it's like they don't want to acknowledge it, and not much is ever even, it's like, wow. I often wonder, like, what are their true motivations? And that led me to really developing an understanding of like the human mind under, right, like I guess certain circumstances. I guess when people grow up with a schema of grandiosity and such like that, it's really easy for them to like, yeah, to not have empathy for others and to like just perpetuate subjugation behaviors. So like maybe they grew up like given too much of everything and not told no enough. So they feel like they have that power, they do have that privilege, usually because they're white males, kind of. But so yeah, environmental racism has like been a real big issue too. And yeah, and just in that air quality control hearing, it was so interesting to see how the city councilor down Lewis also like collaborated with all of these companies, and these companies are all responsible for a lot of injustices, a lot of environmental racism and injustice. And yeah, it often makes me wonder, like, wow, I just see all the work we have yet to do apart from all of this. Like, and it's like, wow, we can't even clean up all of the pollution and harm we're doing to our citizens here at home, and we want to go create that elsewhere. We want to cause suffering elsewhere, but it's like, yeah, and it's like, this is not no defense. This is not a defensive situation. Yeah.
Yes,
I think that's all I have to say.
Yes, this is a really good example of this type of environmental impact that is mediated through the subjugation of governments. And because let's say today, the ozone levels are going to be very high here in Albuquerque. I'd be surprised if there wasn't an ozone warning right now. And this really affects people's lifespan, and it even affects their garden plants. And and yes, Sandia was right there saying, don't regulate these volatile organic chemicals because it could affect our work and we bring all the money. So don't do it. And LANL has done the same thing.
They could instead be building clean energy jobs, right? Jobs that will create a future for us.
Yeah. LANL made sure that in one regulation setting hearing, they didn't want ephemeral streams in New Mexico to fall under toxic chemical regulations. And of course, nearly all the streams in New Mexico are ephemeral. And so they were willing to prevent the state from regulating toxic chemical releases over the whole state, just so they wouldn't have to do it. Anyway, that one of John Burroughs' colleagues once said, these are people for whom the lion's share is not enough. Yep. Any more things before we wrap up? Anybody?
This isn't really directly germane, but I just recently read something, I think somebody named Kate Brown said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, it's like the half-life that people in this, paying attention to nuclear issues are well aware of the term half-life. The half-life that we really probably are not aware of is the two of them, half-life of public attention and the half-life of public memory. And
Yeah, that's right.
Right. You bring us back to reminding again about next Monday evening and how important that is. We don't get such a good opportunity very often. So you have anything to add, Bex, at the end? Trish?
Nope, I'm good.
Be excited for Monday.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll have fun.
Come Monday if you can.
And thank you.
Good.
Yes.
think I
Hi,
have
Jody.
one last
Good. We'll
question.
see you there.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I think we better go for the moment.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Or later.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.